Why don't jobs try harder to keep their employees? Isn't turnover horribly expensive? It is more expensive in the long term, but companies are only focused on short-term results. Cheaper to replace a decent worker than a shit manager. Retention budget is never as high as hiring budget. Sad but true. I may spelled it wrong since I am not native. Had 15 years in call centers. Staff turnover attrition in all was massive, often the staff member's own choice. But one thing I never understood was, without exception, in training they would also go on about the cost to hire and train employees. Oh, it's $3,000 just to set up IT access, blah blah etc. Generally it was quoted accepted that each employee cost the company $10,000 $20,000 before they answered a single call. Then about same again in training costs each year. So why sack so many people for such trivial reasons? Employees became expendable in the 1970s 1980s. Not expensive enough. The larger a team is, the easier it is to replace people through new hires or spreading labor through the rest of the workforce. The way I see it, departments have a harder time proving that an employee deserves a raise. On the flip side, if someone resigns, a new hire with a higher salary can be justified because the position needs to be filled. Basically, to prove your worth, the company has to feel the sting of your departure. Much easier to get a raise by jumping ship for the same reason. Dixie Cup theory of employees. Use them and toss them. Interchangeable parts theory of employees. Keep demanding a rise and you're out on your ear. There are dozens anxious to fill your shoes. Most workplaces are a buddy-buddy game. The more popular you are, the more likely you are to stay. I remember we had one employee at a previous workplace who was hardly ever there. Once we got a 2-week vacation and this person decided to make it 3 weeks for themselves. Everyone else came back to work and this person was lying on a tropical island. Then came back, cool as cucumbers, and got a contract renewal just because they are a good speaker and have the right appearance. I never took a day off and I did not get a contract renewal. In fact, the harder I worked, the less the coworkers thought of me, as if I was stupid. These days you get bosses of bosses of bosses, and they are so far removed from caring about the success of the company because it doesn't impact them at all, just the investors. A good film that really demonstrates this is Ford vs Ferrari. It's based on the true story about Ford building a car to beat Ferrari at Le Mans. There's a top executive at Ford that didn't get along with the driver that would go on to beat Ferrari's drivers, and so this exec wanted to fire him at every opportunity despite the fact that he was up there with the best drivers in the world. Simply explained, he didn't care about the successes of the company as long as his position was secure and he could pass blame on to other people. All he wanted was to impose his will on others, pretty much what we see today. TL:(DR) The employer is playing an odds game and calling your bluff. Because people are actually not that free to job hop. If you have kids or a spouse whose job is important to them, or recently bought a house, your life is deeply rooted in the specific area you did that. It's very expensive to pick up and move, and it might not even be practical. Also, if you already make shit money, you can't really afford to not get paid, no savings to live off of, and the risk of homelessness becomes very high. If you're early in your career, you need some experience, 2 years in one place minimum, just to dissuade job hopper concerns from future employers. And if you're in your late career, you're probably well accustomed to your role and don't want to make a change. Basically, only people with some savings and in very specific windows of their career, raising a family, and paying off a house, have the actual ability to find a better paying job that doesn't shake up their whole life dramatically. That's not a very big percentage of the workforce. So at scale, employers are actually saving money by calling an employee's bluff. Do they lose money on specific people and cases? Yes, absolutely. But at scale, it's more profitable to screw over the worker. Yes, turnover of staff is very expensive. However, for certain roles there is no shortage of people needing work that they can exploit. It's easier for a company to throw money at a problem than to change a culture. Get rid of problematic managers is hard if they are hitting targets. You and your store don't exist to upper management, they only care about what your numbers look like. Usually to boost numbers, they will incentivize store management with bonuses linked to what their numbers look like. Store management are people, just like you, struggling with more debt than you can imagine. Their jobs literally depend on what their numbers look like, and they simply don't know any better. It's ruthless to get to that level, that's all they know. They rotate out often, so they won't be driving the same ship for long. They will do things that will hurt the company in the long term just so their short-term numbers look better. Because that's literally all that matters, the numbers. My company pays a few other agencies to find people. Means there's a new batch of workers every 2 weeks to replace anyone failing their probations. Turnover isn't as expensive as negotiating with a union. The more long-term employees you have, the more likely they'll be able to successfully organize. Amazon loves that the average new employee in their warehouses quits or is fired after 3 months, because it means the relationship between employees isn't as strong. The less long haulers you have, the less influence workers have over their workplace. The right to work propaganda campaign has made people more likely to leave a bad job than commit to making bad jobs better. Most companies will gladly pay a new hire the money that a great ex-employee would have accepted to stay. Maybe your husband hasn't found the right fit for him. I was 52 before I found the place I want to retire from. That was 6 years ago, and I still love my job. It might be he needs to look at a different type of job altogether or figure out what company or job he wants to do and find a way to get there. Whether that's applying for an entry-level position so he can learn or taking some college classes or whatever. Don't forget the benefit to company morale of letting senior management play out their power fantasies. Newbies are more compliant and less jaded. They don't want good employees, they want obedient ones.